This is Jonah Dempsey, and I'm in Stockholm, Sweden. So I'm going to talk about the expanded instincts today, EI, or EEI, I guess, the Enneagram expanded instincts. I've taken to just calling the system expanded instincts because even though it follows the structure of the Enneagram and has some relation to the Enneagram, it's pretty much its own thing. I mean, it's its own system, and it really is like I haven't found a correlation between it and the Enneagram other than the basic structure. At first, when I was learning it, I thought, well, it's probably important that people know Enneagram first. But then I realized, and having talked to people about the expanded instincts, people who have no knowledge of the Enneagram whatsoever still get a good sense of it. In fact, I would almost say it's easier to assess type in the expanded instincts than in the conventional Enneagram. But before I go into that, let's take a step back and talk about what it is. The expanded instincts, or Enneagram expanded instincts, is a system developed by Rob Zeke Colopy of attitudinal psyche fame, and it follows the structure of the Enneagram. So if you're familiar with the Enneagram, you'll know that actually the Enneagram of personality, as it's technically called, that is following this shape, the shape of the Enneagram and how it relates to personality structure. But Oscar Ichazo, the creator of the Enneagram, he didn't only make the Enneagram of personality, he actually created 108, or I think, because it was a mystically significant number, 108 different Enneagram schemas, of which like 4 or 5 of which he used to teach the Enneagram of personality. So the Enneagram as a shape, it's not just a shape. I mean, it's kind of a 9-pointed star, but it's also like a triangle, the 3, 6, 9 points, and then these 6 other points that are all connected in a very mystically significant sequence, nicknamed the fingerprint of God. I won't go too much into that other than to say that that sequence has deep importance in numerology because it's the sequence that results anytime you divide any number by 7. So, for instance, 1/7 is 0.142857. That just, repeats over and over. 1428571, 1428571. That's just sort of infinitely repeating as the decimal or after the decimal. And that is 1/7. 2/7 is 0.285714. 285714, 2857, endlessly repeating, and so on. 3/7, 4/7, 5/7, 6, and so on. So that this Enneagram is very mystically significant and numerologically significant. And from one perspective, it's just a 9-pointed star, but it's not really because there's structure to it. The 3, 6, 9 form a triangle, and then the other points form this endless sequence nicknamed the fingerprint of God. So Oscar Ichazo, the creator of the Enneagram, he made 108 of these different sets of keynotes or terms, and some of them we're familiar with, but he did the Enneagram of vices and virtues, and the Enneagram of personality that we're all familiar with, and a bunch of other ones. So in some sense, Rob has just sort of added to this tradition of creating a new Enneagram with new terminology, but it really is its own distinct layer separate from the traditional Enneagram layer. And it really gets into the question of what the Enneagram is describing, and then what are the expanded instincts describing. And Rob has approached this question a few ways. One is that he says the traditional Enneagram is the hell that you're running away from, and the expanded instincts, the heaven that you're running towards. The other way he describes the traditional Enneagram, and this is not unique to him, but he looks at it in terms of where we have ego, where we're egotistical. Like a 5 might be egotistical about being really smart, or, I'm a 7. I might have ego around having the best and being the best and knowing the best, best. And the 9 might have ego around not having an ego and kind of spiritual bypassing and stuff like that. So that's another perspective, is the conventional Enneagram is your ego hell. And it's pretty much what we describe in the negative. So if somebody's talking about what they can't stand, what they hate, what's annoying to them, what's obnoxious, all these negative things, then they're talking about their Enneatype, their Enneagram type. So as a 7, I might be saying, oh, I can't stand bad coffee. And that's a very 7 thing to say, because the 7 wants the best. And it's always looking for the best, and wanting to be the best and have the best and all this stuff. Because I have an ego fixation around the best, and my hell is inferiority or not the best, or which very much is compatible with conventional descriptions of the 7 in Enneagram, where their hell is being trapped and deprived and in pain. Now, I will say, by the way, if you're watching this and you're coming from a conventional Enneagram background, most of the people who I've met who self-identified as 7s, or even typed as 7s, are like 9 with a 7 fix, or 3 with a 7 fix. And this is something we'll go into in the Enneagram class, where we talk about trifix and how 3, 6, 9 are sort of transparent or invisible, so that if you have the so-called hexad fixes, if you have anything in your trifix from 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, or 8, then that fix, that part of your trifix, will shine through so strongly that most conventional Enneagram typists they'll type that as your main fix, because they're going to ignore the primary 3, 6, or 9 fix. So that's something we'll go into. That's just a little bit of a detail about how Enneagram research has developed, and how really in the last decade or even less, we've had this renaissance in understanding of Enneatype through the work of people like Enneagram Universe. So, but I don't want to go into all that. That's a little nuanced detail. But basically, the way you could see your Enneagram type is this hell that you're running away from, and where you are ego fixated. I've also often approached it as where we have a sort of alert for I'm okay, you're okay. Like 7, I'm okay if I'm being filled up, you're okay if you're filling me up. It's sort of where we get anxiety if something's not okay. And this fits very much with the idea from Jacques Lacan, the great French psychoanalyst, who said that anxiety is the only emotion which doesn't lie. So if you want to trust something, and if you want to trust a surefire way to assess somebody's type, you look at where they feel not okay. You look at their anxiety, and you kind of look at what triggers their anxiety. So again, I'm talking in the negative here, and the idea is that everything in the Enneagram is sort of this, that anytime we're describing things in the negative, we're talking about our Enneagram type. We're really talking about our ego fixation. We're talking about where we have ego, where we have egotism, where we have a certain level of pride or vanity. And that's sort of what Enneagram is describing, is this ego fix. And then the expanded instincts are this other side of it. The heaven. What is our heaven? What is our dream life? What is our dream job? What is our dream relationship? What is our dream purpose? How high do we prioritize purpose in life compared to areas like self-survival or interpersonal? And so there's a lot of structural similarities between Enneagram and expanded instincts. For instance, Enneagram has body, heart or image, and head centers, And expanded instincts has self-survival corresponding to the body and the environment. And then it has interpersonal corresponding to the heart. And then it has purpose corresponding to the head. But, these aren't, they're one-to-one correlations structurally, but I don't want to go too far with that and understanding them because they are really distinct. And then when you actually get into the types, you can definitely see how each of the 9 enneatypes has its own corresponding instinct structurally, but some of them are very, very different. For instance, 369 in the conventional Enneagram is sort of homogenized or attached to other people and to how others see and do things and exist and so on. These are the attachment types. In the expanded instincts, the equivalent to 369, which is community, existential, and security, those 3 instincts, community, existential, security, are all distinguishing, and they're all about what makes them different and how are they distinct from what other people want or think. So there's some cases where there seems to be a really clear correlation between the enneatype and the expanded instinct. And there are other places where it's actually very opposite, where the expanded instinct, which I guess makes sense because if the enneatype is the hell, the opposite is heaven. But it's like, it's not just this clear thing where if you know Enneagram, then you already know the expanded instincts. In fact, knowledge of Enneagram can get in the way. And as I was learning the expanded instincts, it was really important for me to kind of table what I already knew about Enneatype. So like some of it relates, some of it doesn't. But yeah, here's an example. I happen to be a 7 in Enneagram. I also have the unknown instinct in the expanded instincts. And unknown sounds a lot like 7, looking for peak experiences and kind of waiting patiently for the next peak to come along. But it's not just experiential, it is about purpose. It borders the more experiential because it's bordering fortitude and the self-survival center. And so, which is more about being immersed in the world and stuff like that. So there's an element of the experiential, but it also has to do with I might not know what my purpose is. None of us might, and the mystery and the unknown of discovering purpose. So there's some of it really sounds a lot like 7, and some of it is sort of new and different. So anyway, I've been kind of rambling a little bit here, but don't worry if you're completely lost. If you're listening to this and you're like, what the heck is Jonah talking about? We have 2 weeks on the expanded instincts. It's going to be explained in a very clear way, not like this rambling sort of, meandering free association I'm doing now. So we will definitely be going into it. And I guess if I had to summarize it, it is going to be looking at questions like, what is your heaven? And what really makes you feel alive? What makes you feel so alive in experiencing it or connecting with people interpersonally? And we're going to be looking at the 9 instincts. They are fortitude. I'll just name them with maybe a 1-sentence description of each to give people a taste. So fortitude, being fully immersed in ownership and fully expanding your existence out into the world and who you are, and fully using up everything at your disposal. Security, being free from distractions and being able to sort of distinguish what your ideal dream situation is and being very particular about it. I have security. Self-management, which has a lot to do with discipline and independence and beauty, things like that. Can have to do with athleticism. It can have to do with there's a lot in each one of these buckets. It's hard to just put it in one sentence. And those are the self-survival instincts. And then where is self-survival in your stack? How important is that for you? For me, it's 3rd. So it's the least. I'm self-survival blind, you could say. Doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that my self-survival is in service of my relationships, interpersonal, and then together, those are both in service of purpose. So I'm a purpose first person. and we can learn about what that's like to be purpose first. Most people are purpose last. Doesn't mean that they don't have a purpose in life, doesn't mean that they don't care about purpose. It just means their purpose is in service to their relationships, and then those are in service to thriving fully in their self-survival. And it can be weird to be purpose first. I'm like backwards of the most common stacking, where I'm purpose first and I'm self-survival last. And so we'll get into some of that nuance as well. But it's like, which of these areas is first, second, and third for you? And then in each of these areas, which instinct do you have? These are going to be some of the questions that we're going into. Yeah, so just giving a little preview, we kind of covered self-survival. What makes you feel alive in self-survival? Is it fortitude, which is kind of immersing yourself so fully in the experience of life and in ownership and possessions? Is it security, which is having your cozy, comfy zone free from outside interference and distractions? Or is it self-management, being minimalist? I shouldn't say only minimalist, but being disciplined in your own independent uh, feelings of health and tracking your energy levels and your health over time and your physicality and things like that, and beauty, like being really beautiful. Um, so those would be three ways that people can feel alive. I happen to feel really alive through security. That's what makes me feel alive. When I have my little comfy, cozy zone and I can sip chocolate, hot chocolate, looking out at the snowfall, I feel really alive. So that's an example of me being a security person. Then we go into interpersonal. What makes you feel alive in relationships? Is it the alchemy of intense physical attraction? Because alchemy borders the self-survival center, so it's like more related to the physical. Uh, do you feel more alive in community and in distinguishing and roles and understanding your relationship with your partner and what makes you special and them special and your relationship different from other relationships? Is it bonding? Is it this idealized memorializing? You have their picture on your wall, you have the altar to them, and you're sort of praying to this idealized altar. Um, One of those is going to make you feel really alive at the interpersonal level. And then finally, when it comes to purpose, which is things like your job and what you do with your life and sort of all the things that purpose sounds like, right? Um, do you really feel alive through being immersed in your purpose and understanding your own, or not even understanding, but just being immersed in your own self-significance, your own life story, where you came from, who you are, your identity, what you're going through? Do you feel alive taking yourself out of the equation and looking at things from the God's eye view from above, existentially and philosophically, and asking the big existential questions? Or do you feel alive with the unknown, right? Self-significance, existential or unknown. So I don't want to go into them too much. I'm not doing a class here. I have done some other videos on this. You can definitely watch those videos where I go over these. I presented on this at HTHT this year with Lena. And we have 2 weeks in the class devoted to the expanded instincts. That's right after Enneagram. So we'll probably continue comparing and contrasting with Enneagram. But we're going to be going into what the 9 instincts are, the 3 centers, the 3 areas: self-survival, interpersonal, and purpose. And then figuring out what order it is for you, which one's first, second, and third for you. And then we get to have the really fun part, which is once we know your 3 instincts, because it's a trifix for instincts as well, then we get these cute nicknames that Rob came up with that are just so fun to learn. And this is also an area where your aesthetic really comes out. Like if you're self-management, you may have a really sleek aesthetic. I'm security, so I have a more cutesy aesthetic. And we'll see that in the collages. You really can't hide it. It's like something that comes out in the collages that's just part of the images you choose and what you like. And if you're making a picture of your heaven, what your heaven looks like. And I have a very cutesy heaven because I have security there. And self-management people might have like leopards and tigers and panthers, and they might have Greek god statues with chiseled abs, and they can be very statuesque and lots of straight lines and geometry and all this stuff. So you really see a pretty radically different aesthetic emerge. And of course, it's not just those 2 instincts, it's all 9 of the instincts. And then when you take three instincts together, they have their own aesthetic. And it's uncanny how this works. I mean, it seems almost impossible. Like, how could we map human aesthetics like this? But it's really showing that there is a deep connection between aesthetic choices and the psyche. And whether it's the clothing you wear or a collage you're making, like, the choices you make reflect your psyche. And that's something that becomes very apparent, especially through expanded instincts. So, really excited to teach this material. It's the newest system we'll be teaching. It's, to me, one of the most interesting areas of research in personality typology. And yeah, really excited to have 2 weeks devoted to that in the class starting next month. Thanks for watching.